an unusual way to make use of the next contender in our countdown of extreme freeloaders. These fishermen go hunting with an animal that knows it's much easier to hitch a ride than to go swimming. So, by carefully tying a line around its tail, the fishermen gently release their living fish hook. Just like a heat-seeking missile, it sets off in search of a target. This fish doesn't hunt minnows. It's only interested in animals big enough to give it a free ride. And when it finds something, it doesn't bite, but suck. Its front dorsal fin has become a suction pad. All it has to do is find something big in the water and stick its head onto it. No wonder it's called the sucker fish, or remora. For the fisherman, it's a great way to catch a meal. For the remora, it's a great way to live. A remora will cling onto anything big in the water, be it a boat or even a human. Usually they're found on turtles, whales, sharks, and the largest fish in the sea, the whale shark. There are plenty of other fish that hitch a lift from a whale shark. They get pushed along, like riding the bow wave of a ship. But the remora is the only freeloader that can stop swimming altogether, thanks to the suction disc on top of its head. The disc is made up of slat-like structures that open and close to take a firm hold on the skin. By sliding backward, the remora can increase the suction. So the faster its host swims, the better the grip. To release itself, it just has to swim forward. The remora is number 3 in the countdown because it not only steals a ride on bigger animals, it also scrounges a free meal. The remora are thought to feed on everything from parasites on the skin to feces to scraps that fall out of its host's mouth. The only trouble is that sometimes this freeloader can get too big for its own good. At the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California, it's dinner time for a very special remora. It's found a way to not only scrounge a free meal, but to get it by special delivery. It's luxurious living for a freeloader that's simply outgrown its welcome, as curator Sandy Troutween explains.
It's grown so large that it's too big and too well cared for to attach to any of the sharks or rays here at the aquarium.
Luckily, when a remora loses its host, it can still swim to find something else to cling to. That's very different from our next contender that's become a fly that can't fly. Number 2. The forests of New Zealand are home to a freeloader that's completely dependent on the generosity of another animal. A hollow tree is a communal home for short-tailed bats. These flying mammals can easily move through the forest to eat insects, fruit, and flowers. If only life was as easy for the animal crawling in to number 2 in the countdown. It's a fly that can't fly. It's lost its wings and now is totally dependent on bats for its home, food, and transportation. As many as 10 flies can be found in the fur of one bat when it leaves the roost to feed at night. Scale those flies up to human size, and it would be like walking around with 10 lobsters in your underpants. The bats don't seem to worry too much about carrying the freeloaders from roost to roost. They'll even tolerate the bugs feeding on secretions produced by the bat's mouth, eyes, and rear end. And since the flies don't want to leave their babies behind, they even time their reproduction to coincide with the bats. The maggots may look helpless, but it doesn't take long for them to develop powerful legs to cling to the fur of the bats. It's been suggested that since these flies have such close connections with their host, they have a level of social behavior unknown in any other fly. The flies live side by side with their babies and even groom each other. While the bats and their hitchhiking bugs live in harmony, not all freeloaders are as harmless or as easy to find. Every day, the Long Beach seaport handles up to 12,500 containers from locations all around the world. And for the Los Angeles Border Patrol, that means there are 12,500 possible places where unwanted animals could have hitched a ride. The tricky part is finding them, as Officer Gabriel Padilla explains.
When you're inspecting for pests, you have to think like a pest. You have to think, where would a pest want to hide? The pests do not want to be found, so they'll hide in the corners, underneath packages, and anywhere else where they can conceal themselves very well.
And if they stay hidden and become established, they could join the 30,000 species of plant and animal invaders that are causing havoc throughout the country. According to figures provided by Cornell University, each year invasive species cost the United States more than $123 billion. It's thought that introduced insects alone cause $20 billion worth of damage.
Oh, there's one right there. There's Lawrence. I see him right there. See it? I don't know how I'm going to get that. Very good. Good find.
It's the end of the line for this freeloading insect. And for any bat fly that loses contact with its host. These six-legged scroungers are number 2 in the countdown because they're totally dependent on the bats for survival. If their ride takes off without them, they may fall into the lair of the predatory insects waiting below. However, there's still one animal that's a more extreme freeloader.
We've seen the 9 contenders. They've all developed strange ways to sponge off their hosts. Only one animal is a more extreme freeloader. It's number 1.
Welcome to the largest collection of extreme freeloaders in America. It's the perfect place to find the animal lurking at number 1 in the countdown. It looks like fettuccine, but you wouldn't want this in your stomach. a worm. A tapeworm. How would you like to have this coiled up inside your belly? Since we give it all the food it can eat and a warm place to live, it never has to leave. It's the perfect freeloader. We're home to more than 25 different species, so there are a lot of tapeworms out there, as Dr. Eric Hobart explains.
In humans right now, there probably are about 9 to 10 million people on the planet that are infected with these tapeworms.
And this is only one of 30 million species at the National Parasite Collection in Beltsville, Maryland. Each parasite comes complete with a very personal history. The tapeworm on these slides came out of an Inuit hunter who lived off the coast of Alaska in 1969.
This tapeworm could be 20 or 30 years old. Each segment contains all of the reproductive organs. Millions and millions of eggs are produced by this tapeworm over its lifetime.
That's because these freeloaders have a problem. How do they find a new host for their children? The answer is to produce 1 million eggs every day. They're found in segments that break off the tapeworm's body and pass out of the gut. And since the eggs are in pooey packages, they catch the eye of hungry scavengers. But birds are only temporary hosts. The tapeworm needs to move into something much bigger. So it gets passed out inside another messy missile. Once inside a cow, the parasite makes its way into the muscle tissue. That's how it will eventually end up back inside meat-eating humans. It's an incredibly complicated life cycle, and one that relies on several different animals, including humans, to do all the hard work. And that's why this remarkable freeloader is #1 in the countdown. The tapeworm has found ways to scrounge its food, its home, and transport for its eggs. That means the only thing it has to do is kick back and make babies. Which is why, when it comes to freeloading, there's no doubt that the tapeworm really is the most extreme.